Well, hello everybody. My name's Glenn Sumlin and you're watching Sniper Photography. A couple of months ago, I put up a video up on this channel regarding what lenses I use for my landscape photography. Now, I usually don't do gear reviews. I find them boring and they're not really helpful to me personally. But to answer the questions that I field from a lot of people, both on social media and when I'm out in the field, and just in general conversation, they asked me what lenses I use for my landscape photography. Now, in that last video, there was a couple of lenses that weren't in it. And the reason for that is that they were sitting in my studio. A couple of these lenses I use probably 70% of the time for my commercial photography, and every now and again I drag them out of there and put them into the landscape photography bag, and I've got them here today to talk to you about them. Plus I'll go through the lenses that I currently own. Now, to get this started, I actually own 10 lenses for my personal landscape photography. Now you probably think, why on earth would someone need 10 lenses? Well, very good question, but a very simple answer. These lenses, all different, these 10 lenses, I use them for certain situations or certain landscapes or certain areas, and mainly composition and what I'm after. But I'll explain to you about that as I go through. Now, the first lens that I really want to talk to you about is this one. It is a 24mm tilt shift lens. Now, I'm due to do a video on this lens in the next few days. An absolutely incredible piece of kit. For people that don't know what a tilt shift lens is, basically what it is, you're talking about lens movement, not camera movement. You'll see people when they take photographs of panoramas where they move the camera like that. Well, with a tilt shift lens, you don't move the camera, you move the lens left to right across the plane of focus and the sensor. They're also good for landscape photography because if you want extreme technical sharpness for your background. And I use this tilt shift lens when I'm going to print photographs more than A3 plus size. So that's why I'm showing you this today in this kit of 10 lenses. It's a 24mm f3.5 tilt shift lens, absolutely incredible to use. A lot of people don't know what they are, or they're too frightened to pick one up and try it, or it's the expense that stops a lot of people from buying them. And these things are, well, you're looking at about $3,500 for that. So it's a lot of money to spend if you're only going to use it a couple of times a year, but I'll explain that to you in a separate video. But that's the first lens I want to show you. It's a 24mm tilt shift lens, fixed focal length of 24mm. In actual fact, most of my landscape photography is done with 24mm anyway, so I can use this as a normal 24mm lens until I want to use the tilt and shift function. So that's the first one. The next one is a macro lens. And this is a brilliant little lens. This is a lens from Tamron. It's the 2.8 macro lens, 90mm, fixed focal length, but it is a macro lens. A lot of people buy lenses and manufacturers put macro on them. Well, not necessarily correct, because until you get really, really close to your subject, that's when you'll know that your lens is not a macro lens. Macro lenses, such as this one, the Tamron, have been around for some time. I use this when I want to do something a bit different with my landscape photography. With landscape photography, we're all encompassed in taking the green vistas, but what about on the ground? Moss and moss-covered trees and leaves on the bottom of creek beds, or those polished stones you see at the base of waterfalls. So this is why I use a macro lens, the 90mm macro 2.8 1:1 magnification. Absolutely incredible lens. No one's given me the lenses. I brought these all with my own money. That's why I use it. Every now and again I'll use it. Sometimes I'll just take this out, and I'm due to do another video on this one in the next couple of days. So that's the Tamron 90mm macro 1:1 lens. The next one is something that a lot of people don't realise, is that the 50mm Nifty 50 1.8 You'll be surprised at how good the 50mm lens is for your landscape photography, because 50mm lens on a full frame camera is exactly what our eye sees. What we see is what this sees, and vice versa. Now, sometimes I'll just take out one camera and one lens, and this is the lens. It's a 50mm 1.8 nifty 50, absolutely fantastic. And what it does, it teaches you to move. It teaches you to move yourself, move your tripod, but you're constantly moving when you're using a 50mm lens, and that is how you improve learning about composition, by using a lens like this. So if you don't have a 50mm lens, I suggest you try and buy one. They're not very expensive. For some unknown reason, they're just not. But 52mm lens, absolutely fantastic. And sometimes I do use it. The next one is, we'll go into the ultra wides now. This is a 14mm fixed focal length 2.8 ultra wide angle lens. I use this lens when I know that the area I'm going to has a lot of foreground attractions, so to speak. And I get in close. When you're using an ultra wide angle lens, the idea is you need foreground element. I mean, if you don't have foreground element when you're using an ultra wide angle lens, and the people look at the photograph, you might make sure you give them a magnifying glass, because everything is so small and pushed so far away. But when you're using a 14mm ultra wide angle lens, you get close to your subject, very, very close, and really blow out that foreground for that effect. That's the 14mm 2.8 fixed focal length. The next one is a 20mm ultra wide angle lens. Now you probably think, why would I want a 14mm ultra wide and then a 20mm ultra wide? Well, the difference between the 14 and the 20 is quite remarkable, actually. You don't have to get so close, so the appearance of something close to you isn't as so dramatic as the 14mm. These are artist lenses. These lenses are used when you're trying to create art within your photography. They're not for everybody, but this is a 20mm 2.8 fixed focal length lens, all manual operation. There's no autofocus with these lenses, and you should be manual focusing before you take the shot anyway with your landscape photography. So they're the two ultra wides. The next one is a 24-105, a beast of a lens. This lens goes everywhere. This is the first lens I always go for or take. Been right around the world, probably seen more countries than most people, and just an absolutely fantastic lens. F4 just does the job. It's a workhorse, and yeah, I'll never sell it. It's just a great lens. The next one, we're going back to wide again, and that's a 16-35. 16-35 is Canon's premium, really, in the digital SLR era. Their wide angle lens, 16-35. 90% of the time, I have this on the front of my camera, and usually I'm shooting it anywhere between 16 to 24mm anyway, but I do have a little bit of reach with a 35mm on this at that far end. The 16-35 f4, brilliant to use. Just a really, really nice lens, and nice and sharp too. The next one is not quite as sharp, but it's a 17-40 ultra wide angle, or wide angle lens if you want to call it. Probably ultra wide, anything under 24 is classed as ultra wide. So ultra wide, 17-40. Sometimes I'll only go out with this lens and one camera and see what I can do. This is all about testing yourself and learning, constantly learning and testing yourself. 17-40, once again, I had this a few years now. It came out before the 16-35. Canon released this before that one, and really, really good. Not quite as sharp as the 16-35, but you expect that. There is a big difference between these two lenses, but once again, very, very good to use. The next one really is probably, I'd say, the doyen of landscape photography, and that is this, the 70-200 f4. If ever there is a lens that suits landscape photography, it is this one here, the 70-200 f4. I know plenty of people that have got this lens, and they will never, ever, ever sell them. They are just just an absolute incredible lens to use for landscape photography. You got the reach of 200 millimeters. And if you're shooting on a crop body, either a Canon or Nikon 1.5 or 1.6 crop factor, you're going to get a lot of reach with these lenses, especially the next one as well. So the 70 to 200 is just an absolutely brilliant lens to use. And finally, this one here, this is a huge lens. This is a 100 to 400 from Tamron. I like Tamron lenses. Their optics are absolutely pin sharp, beautiful lenses to use. And it's absolutely gorgeous the way they finish them. Like the Tamron macro lens, it's just a beautiful finish. The Canon lenses are very hard looking, but that's their reputation. But that is the 100 to 400 Tamron telephoto lens, 100 to 400. Don't use it all that often, but to sum all this up, excuse me, to sum all this up, why do I have 10 lenses? Well, basically it comes down to planning. When I plan everything, I plan every photographic expedition weeks in advance. And I use various platforms, Google Earth, and I look at other photographers' reviews and photos of the area. And that gives me a good idea of what sort of composition's available and what the terrain is. Because 9 times out of 10, I'm probably only taking 2, probably maximum 3 lenses with me to suit that location. Now, there's nothing worse than going out to a location where you haven't done any research or haven't planned, and you turn up with a 70 to 200. In actual fact, it's too big. You needed something like a 16 to 35 or a 24 millimeter lens, and vice versa. So planning is so important, which that will dictate what lenses that I use or I need to do that job. And 9 times out of 10, it's pretty well spot on. I tend to carry not all the full focal range because, as I said earlier, most of my images are taken between, say, 16 to 35 millimeter, around the 24 millimeter mark. But if I know if there's great strong foreground, I will take the ultra wides out with me. So I don't take all these 10 lenses with me in one go. That's just ludicrous. That's just ridiculous. But I do take what's required. And this is where your planning comes into it. Finding out the location, looking what's available at that location, and to really pinpoint what lenses that you need. Now, if you only have 1 or 2 lenses, don't let this video phase you. I'm not saying you need 10 lenses or whatever, but it does make it a little bit easier when it comes to going out into the field with your camera and your lenses. Pre-planning is so important. I pre-plan, as I said, all my images, all my shots for my images and the locations, and that tells me what lenses I need. So they're the lenses I use. I want you to keep an eye out for the video that I'm going to do on the tilt shift lens. As you can see, I've got all these knobs and twists and things and whatever. I will be doing a video on this one, and I will also be doing a video on the macro lens and using off-camera flash. Now that's very interesting, off-camera flash. A lot of macro photographers have the flash mounted on top of the camera. Not really the best way to go. Better off having a slave on top of the camera, getting into your macro area and using off-camera flash, which I'll show you in this video with this particular Tamron 90mm macro lens. So there's 2 videos coming up pertaining to those 2 lenses. So that's it. That's the lenses that I use for my landscape photography, and that's the reason why I own 10 of them, and also the reasons why I pre-plan to give me enough information to know which lenses to take on any given day. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are and your feelings on this. Please put your comments down below. And by the way, I do answer every comment. I think that's common courtesy. So put your comments and thoughts down below. I'd love to read them, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So that's it. That's another episode of Sniper Photography. My name's Glenn Samuel, and as I always say, be nice to yourself, family and friends, but most of all, you keep shooting, keep smiling. Bye for now.